But in the era of consensus reality, in the era of, like, American empire success, like, we did actually believe in looking at real critiques, putting real limits on things. In the current era of the coward, loser, idiot billionaire, we don't do that anymore.
Hello and welcome to the More Freedom Foundation podcast. I'm Rory, in charge of podcasting, and with me as always is Robert Morris. How are you this time?
Oh, I'm doing all right, Rory. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. The weather's been very good this week. Did you get out anywhere?
Did I get out anywhere? No, I've mostly just been going to Michigan this summer. I have
Okay.
a family place on a lake up in northern Michigan, and it's pretty magical. I just sort of
It's
swim,
hard to argue with that. Sounds
and
lovely.
yeah, yeah. About to go up in September, and it's great because all the kids are in school, and it means I can actually go to a restaurant up there as well. So it's nice. Yeah, that's kind of excited about that, despite the fact that my country seems to be descending into a flaming dumpster fire of corruption and elite illegality.
Have you noticed the prices? Because from here it's like, oh, grocery prices and stuff in America are going up and up and up. Have you noticed it yourself, or are things as bad as the news proclaims?
I mean, I'm lucky enough to not, have a family, and so I'm sort of somewhat insulated from that sort of thing. I certainly I go to grocery stores and take note that I'm paying a little bit more, but
Mm-hmm.
my needs are pretty simple, and I don't.
As long as you're not buying eggs, apparently.
I do buy a lot of eggs, and I
Uh-oh.
honestly haven't. You see, the thing about prices in New York City, Rory, is that they're just so baseline inflated that, like, it's entirely
External
possible.
inflation sometimes doesn't quite affect them the same.
Well, it certainly does, but it's just that it's we're coming from such a high price point that it's like, "Oh, no." I feel like in a lot of the world, a lot of the country, it's like another 50% on my another 50 cents on my dozen eggs. Like in New
Mhm.
York City, it's like another 50 cents on my dozen eggs is barely
Okay.
noticeable. Yeah. So it hasn't really hit me particularly hard. I just don't spend much money.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
it's
being
not
very
the most
frugal.
being an internet guy is not the most lucrative. So for about a decade, I've trained myself to have my wants be low, and most of my spending, which I'm not doing much of this year, is travel. And because oil and gas prices are so low, that's sort of the main component of plane tickets. So yeah, just personally, I don't have much of an inflation experience.
Well, if you would like to make some money, have you thought
Mm.
about being like, I don't know, just a shill for the American government? Seems to be
Yeah,
very lucrative.
I'm sure that'd go really well. You mean a lobbyist of some sort? It doesn't seem like,
Maybe.
yeah, I feel like
Or sort of working on some sort of meme coin for Trump?
yeah,
Anything like
that
that?
that that is also that is certainly a growth industry. So today, what I want to talk about is certainly the cataclysmic failure and obscene corruption of the Trump administration. Here we are, I guess, 7 months into its functioning. But I want to talk more broadly.
Pillaging?
Yes, and I'm not even doing that very well. If I would
Hmm.
like to talk more broadly about the corruption in the United States. And I've spent a good deal of time recently studying the 1920s and the 1930s, and I do think it is a comparable period of time
Is he a
because
bit of a Hoover?
I don't think Hoover was as personally responsible
Hmm.
for for the economic cataclysm as Donald Trump is likely to be. But this isn't a video about Donald Trump's personal responsibility. It's about the extreme strangeness of the fact that he's president again. He would not have been able to be president again without a high degree of complicity of one of the most worthless sets of elites a country has ever had. I mean, just truly, truly contemptible, worthless, idiotic, useless group of wealthy people. I am not a person who, is a rabid egalitarian or a communist or like I do believe there is a role for leadership and wealthy people in an economy. You want people who are good at doing things and successful at things to be in charge of things. These are not people who are good at things or successful at things. These are stem to stern, a bunch of spreadsheet manipulating jerkwads who just, like, have you ever heard, like, there's this classic, I think it's kind of right-wing coded, but it's like, strong men make good
I
times.
think Joe
Good,
Rogan's popularized it.
good times make weak
Hmm.
men, and then weak men make bad times. When it's like, I think that actually has a very direct application to the only class of people that have had unreservedly good times
Hmm.
for the past 80 years in the United
Yeah.
States, and that is the class of wealthy people produced by the Reagan Revolution. Frankly, we have been too nice to wealthy people in the United States. Like, there's a role for wealthy people. I'm a fan of the Venetian Republic and the progress of capitalism over the past 500 years. I am someone who believes that, wealthy people
Have a role in society.
have a leadership role in society, have capacity to do things. These people, from Silicon Valley to Wall Street today to, Jamie Dimon to Mark Andreessen to, like, Bill Ackman, these people are clowns. And frankly, they have had way too easy a time of it. And that's why they're so weak. Like, we had a better class of wealthy people when we made it a little harder for them. When we gave them a boot camp. Like, the New Deal era produced some really capable wealthy people. Frankly, it was created by very capable wealthy people like FDR or Herbert Lehman, who we were talking about, the governor of New York. And, it created a system where people could be very wealthy and successful and find themselves in leadership roles in the country. Somewhere around the 1980s, something broke, and it's gotten a lot more broken between the first and second Trump terms. And I definitely want to talk about the specific horrific corruption of Donald Trump and his second administration, but I also want to talk about how much worse things are now, how close to spinning out of control
Hmm.
they are. The go-go, I mean, we people this
Well,
was
because I
this
seen, is it a Senator Murphy's report? This was only like 6 weeks in, and a popular theme was like, oh, this thing that was always kind of illegal, suddenly the board, everyone got fired, and then this next thing that was illegal all along got passed the next day. Like, it just seems to be like constantly things that would normally take an administration maybe 2 years of dodginess to get through is just like happening at such an incredible rate that's like it's hard to keep track of.
It is 100% clear that if you want to get away with corruption, if you want to steal from your constituents and you're an elected official in this country, all you have to do is just sign up for political loyalty with Donald Trump, and he will instruct the Department of Justice to let you get away with it.
Yeah, yeah. All of the guardrails have been removed for Donald Trump. The media
Mm.
guardrails were removed, and I think something very crucial happened in the Biden administration. Two things primarily. It was already a very weak and stupid elite. The wheels had been coming off for quite some time. The Iraq War, the 2008 financial crisis, the horrific crimes perpetrated in Libya, in Syria by the United States, just general the inability to recover from the 2008 financial crisis, the prioritization of the Wall Street criminals over the people who lost their houses. I mean, just this was going on for quite some time. But I would say two serious things happened in the Biden administration that sort of forced us further into a realm of unreality and a bunch of selfish, stupid people in charge taking incredibly poor steps. Let's not forget, I mean, let's not minimize how bad Joe Biden was as a president, how his personal choices were abhorrent, how his foreign policy choices were abhorrent. Nonetheless, I believe that Kamala Harris would naturally have won had the elites, our worthless billionaires, and are the media organizations they owned not hopped in the tank for Donald Trump, a guy that they had opposed massively in 2016.
Well, especially the Silicon Valley types always were sort of seen as Democratic side, and now in this election they seem to switch sides.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, it's all absurd. I mean, and it's a bunch of, and fundamentally, that Silicon Valley jump is a bunch of guys who recognized we have nothing to sell but fraud anymore.
Mhm.
And the US government is waking up to this and is beginning to get in the way of our fraud. So we're going to go with the fraud president. Like,
The
this was a
fraud guy.
pretty, I don't know how conscious a choice it was that these people made, like Mark Andreessen but they're not, or David Sachs, or the rest of the PayPal mafia, except for Reid Hoffman, who like kind of still pretends to support, the genocide Democrats. Like, I don't know how conscious it was, because these are not very smart people. They decided to go for Trump like all the way. But first, let's just talk about some of the baseline horrific corruption of Trump, because it's important to just like emphasize these things, because the standard response, oh, every politician is corrupt, every politician does corrupt things, and yet okay, like Biden was corrupt, like his brother became rich as a consultant off of his name. Like, this is standard and is pretty gross and happens. Like, everybody loves Jimmy Carter because that was like a rare exception. This is what politicians do. That gross stuff, Hunter Biden, whatever, is in the scale of like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you're including salaries, or what have you. Like, Donald Trump is been participating in multi-billion-dollar scams.
Yeah.
And like like, yeah, sure, every politician is corrupt or whatever, but like Donald Trump and his family have literally made billions of dollars off of being president. Like, this is quite literally multiple orders of magnitude worse.
But aren't they also selling
Mm.
like Trump merch on the, what do you call it, White House official website?
It's disgusting. Like, it's trashy. It's incredibly trashy. But it's also like, I mean, billion-dollar fraud is like, I mean, I know we talk about the U.S. government all the time, and then they're like, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and sooner or later you got real money, is the joke. But like, it's like, no, like, this is the Trump family personally stealing $1 billion off of being president. Like, that's really horrible. So specifically, Trump is a big real estate owner who owns a bunch of resorts and golf resorts, and I think there was somebody who's tracking. There was like, over the past 6 months, there's been like 50 lobbyist events at Trump properties. This is going on constantly. Those are just the like marquee, like, hi, this is a lobbyist organization having an event, but like all of his properties, all of his hotels are filled more often.
But wasn't it famous like Mar-a-Lago? It was like all the top leaders of the world and businesses would have to go there and go through all his processes that would give him loads of money, and then they'd be able to meet Trump.
So that is definitely a dynamic. But so this isn't even, I mean, this is just like very obvious, like lobbyists having and foreign governments having conferences at his places. In the first term, like he owned a high profile historic hotel on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. They sold it as soon as he was out of power because they didn't think he'd be president again. Oops. But yeah, so that's just like baseline, like obvious horrific stuff. The crypto stuff is insane. If you look at like Trump during his first administration, he was like, this crypto stuff is stupid. It's not real money. He is personally benefiting to the tune of billions of dollars. Famously, there was the Trump coin thing. It's just a meme coin.
Trump received 80% of the coin and timed its release. So he owned 80% of that and profited from that, and then knew exactly when to do the dump.
Yeah, so they made hundreds of millions. His family made hundreds of millions of dollars off of that. His two sons, Eric and Donald Jr., have like multiple crypto-related ventures.
Also, I think if you were like the top 10 investors of that coin got to meet Trump, but apparently it was like such a damp squib and Trump didn't even turn up, and you got like one of his tacky watches or something.
Oh, well, no, so Justin's son is a crypto fraud person, basically.
Crypto fraud person.
That was being investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. He bought $75 million in Trump coin, and then the Securities and Exchange Commission dropped the charges. So no, but this is as straightforward corruption as you could imagine. The horrifying thing here, and so I think so far, so like, we've been discussing stuff that would be discussed in the New York Times or the Washington Post. Oh, isn't this alarming? What have you?
Coffeezilla.
Nothing ever comes of it, because what they don't mention is that this is like these $1 billion worth of fraud that the crypto fraud that the Trump family is profiting off of is barely scratches the surface of what's actually happening. So this Justin Sun thing seems like a really straightforward, obvious corruption case, right? Like but he gave the Trump family $75 million and then the SEC dropped his case. We should be able to prosecute that. The true horror of this, Rory, is that the Trump administration can say very clearly, "Oh no, we dropped all the cases."
Oh yeah, yeah. It was completely legitimate.
Because
there was nothing wrong.
no, it is like they have an adequate defense in saying, "No, we didn't just drop that case. We dropped all the cases." Like the Securities and Exchange Commission is no longer looking into securities fraud. Like it's not something they're interested in anymore. They have cut the staff of the Securities and Exchange Commission by 12%. The guy they finally put in charge is this guy, Paul Atkins, whose entire career has been advocating for less financial regulation. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is an attempt to keep U.S. businesses from using fraud and bribery to do business. They have just said, we're not going to enforce that anymore. So that's like when you see a Trump fraud story, absolutely be scandalized, absolutely be horrified, but be even more horrified when you realize that all of this is just the tip of the iceberg. And there are hundreds of similar scammers who are getting a free pass because of this.
But there would just be so much normal day-to-day corruption that the U.S. government would normally be checking, which is now just like they don't have the staff to look into. Because one thing you always talked about, the last president was he put in a lot of money into the IRS to just mean they can, do their normal job. And have they just been put out to pasture now?
Yep. Well,
Is it just one guy at the IRS now?
So the IRS had been systematically defunded over the course of decades by the Republicans in Congress. Biden, one of the great things that he did that turned rich people against the Democratic Party entirely, was he just gave them $8 billion more a year. Like less money than the Trump the effing Trump family has made off of being president. Just $8 billion a year. That obviously more than pays for itself, because under the Biden administration, like rich people who hadn't bothered to even file their taxes.
You were saying you knew people that were like, they hadn't done their taxes almost out of laziness. It was just a bit complicated. And then when Biden put the money in, it was a bit like, okay, I'll do it now.
I guess I better do that. Yeah. So for basically like a year and a half or 2 years there, we began to pick up some of the wreckage of 40 years of Reaganism. We began to have a country where wealthy people consistently had to pay their taxes again. And obviously that's over now because Trump is back in. It's shocking. I did want to mention, because it is a single transaction.
How much did you say he put into the IRS? Sorry.
$8 billion a year, Biden.
Okay. Well, yeah, Trump's made what, 750 million at least from just the Trump coin. And he's done some other scams as well. So he's made at least $1 billion in total from just crypto.
So the 1.5, so on August 11th, World Liberty Financial, which is run by the Trump sons and the sons of Witkoff, the big negotiator who I am no longer at all impressed with. Yeah, they have World Liberty Financial, which is just a crypto scam place. And they did some big deal where they got to sell $1.5 billion of the World Liberty Financial coin into one of these sort of crypto depository companies. It's just like the massive return of all of the worst frauds. Like the crypto economy peaked in November of 2021. Like it sort of hit a high and then it just crashed for years because people realized it was worthless, and the Biden administration was like, yeah, this is worthless. We're going to start regulating it like it's a real business. All of that has zoomed back under Trump. I said on election night, if you want to make money, if Trump wins, you buy Bitcoin, and that it's worth, I don't know, at least twice what it was when Trump was elected. Ethereum has recently gone through the roof. Like it is all just this horrifying swindle. I talked a lot on the YouTube channel about SPACs, which were a sort of curse on the market in the 2020 sort of go-go era, which is basically they're essentially a legal structure designed to avoid the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you can sell securities to the public without actually having to prove you have a business to the government, which
But
is
yeah, but is there any legitimate reason for a SPAC? Because it does
no,
just feel like I have a
no.
dodgy company that shouldn't really be on a stock exchange.
No. Yeah, there is no legitimate reason for a SPAC. There's no legitimate reason for crypto to not be regulated out of existence. This is all, and this is what I'm talking about just not a serious class of rich people. This is a class of rich people that has gotten all the juice they can get out of ripping up the legacy of a smarter and better class of rich people. You know, they've private equity doesn't make money anymore. Are you familiar with the class of private equity as a class? It's
Hmm.
essentially to avoid. This is another way to avoid public markets, actually. So to avoid actually having to build great companies that like employ a lot of people and build America, you have private equity
Is this
that
like BlackRock and stuff?
exactly. It's or, they have funds. It's a very broad class, but the whole point of it is that there's not much government scrutiny. Often they will buy companies and try to flip them and sell them for more money.
Or they sort of make them rent their own properties, so then the people that bought the company is like they're now their landlord, and then the company's now independent, so then they're forced to like just sort of keep running until they die.
There's all manner of financial chicanery, and when there's no regulation, when it's all private money, like it's not on the public markets, you can do more stuff. And for a while there were great returns from private equity or whatnot. Nobody's making money doing private equity anymore because they basically destroyed everything. Like
Yeah.
it's not like you don't make money anymore because these people are idiots. And for the past 40 years, you made money by privatizing stuff, by merging stuff, and the tech monopolies have basically grabbed everything that actually makes money anymore. They're losers.
Also, the fact Intel's is potentially going to be bought out, going to become part of
Yes.
like
Yeah.
a part of the American government.
Well, yeah, we don't have much of an industrial base anymore because private equity destroyed it. And yeah, so it's just like it's this class of vultures that
Hmm.
had also managed to completely colonize the Republican and Democratic parties. And yeah, they don't have anything left other than going back to Washington, D.C. and saying, well, okay, make it easier for us to do this fantasy BS stuff. And now, of course, Silicon Valley is getting more in bed with the Defense Department. So
Yeah.
you have this just sort of metastasizing mess of idiots, of
Hmm.
rich idiots running around, sabotaging our country, sabotaging our republic, and probably the greatest crime they committed recently is Gaza, but the greatest crime against the stability of the United States is reelecting Donald Trump. So it's important as we look at like this horrific, horrific picture of catastrophic deregulation, private equity and crypto sleazoids taking over more and more of the country, scamming our grandparents and our, children. It's important to remember that this was all intentional. This is what
The playbook.
the smartest folks wanted. And it comes down to two things that happened during the Biden administration. The first is Joe Biden got into power, and he got into power with the very strong support of left-wing people in his party.
Because wasn't Bernie fairly close in that administration?
Exactly. Bernie is the most popular politician in the United States. Obviously, if the Democrats had nominated him in 2016 or 2020, we would have a very different country today. I would argue a much more successful one, but they didn't. But Joe Biden is a politician, and he's a politician who pays his debts. So he did a few small things that Bernie Sanders wanted. Among them was appointing Lena Khan at the Federal Trade Commission, Jonathan Cantor at the Department of Justice, and an array of other figures who have diagnosed the problem of oligarchy, monopoly, Cory Doctorow's famous term, enshittification of the U.S. economy more broadly, and said, like, hey, hey, we need a better class of business. We need a better class of rich people. And in order to do that, we need to take off the training wheels that they've had that Ronald Reagan gave them 40 years ago. We need to actually start enforcing some of these competition laws that have been on the books as long as there's been corporations, easily generally put together in corporations in the United States. There's been competition law that we just stopped enforcing in the 1980s.
Because you always think General Electric was massive, and also wasn't it Standard Oil was the other big one that got
Standard
split
Oil
up?
was a big one. Well, I mean, those are the big ones. Standard Oil, AT&T, IBM was not split up, but it changed its behavior dramatically because of competition enforcement. And crucially, these are just the big picture ones. Like up until like the 1970s, like there were serious limits on chain grocery stores. Like, the government on the state and national level worked very hard to maintain a more equal playing field and real competition. We don't have real competition anymore. If you went to the right schools and you met the right people in Silicon Valley or whatever, like 30 years ago, like you've had a license to print money with not only with no government oversight, but with nothing but government help for 30, 40 years now. And obviously it's a disaster. And you've got these really weak, greedy, stupid people who don't know how to build anything anymore. I mean, what's the last like innovation we got out of Silicon Valley that like added any value? Like the iPhone in 2007.
Well, the big one would be I don't know if it adds value, but the big one that's fairly new would be Uber,
Yeah. Okay. So Uber,
and then the gig economy for like delivering food and stuff.
yeah, we've managed to, so essentially like we've managed to figure out, Uber, Airbnb,
Making taxi drivers a less stable job.
yeah, making taxi drivers kill themselves. Like we had a solution to these problems that actually made sense. Like Uber now is more expensive than a cab ride in New York City anyway.
Yeah.
But hey, it's
But it's
great.
funded by the Saudis, so
Yeah,
one day they might make money.
Yeah. It's like so the like Airbnb, or like fundamentally these are,
Oh yeah, there are things that existed before. You just give an app.
well, no, it's a regulatory arbitrage is what it is. So they've destroyed like a lot of unionized businesses, a lot of businesses where, taxi drivers it was an absurd system for taxi drivers. Like, they had to buy these,
Yeah, the license.
they had to like take out mortgages on these medallions. It was insane, but you could have like a lower middle class lifestyle.
But I think that also then acted as your pension. So as you left, you then got this big flow of money.
Exactly. So so Silicon Valley over the past 15 years has just been destroying things because the government doesn't actually care about anything other than making money anymore. So it's a pretty grim situation. And what happened is, well, also there was during the Biden administration, there was a bit of a public backlash against, Silicon Valley, which was seen as playing a role in bringing Trump to power, was seen as these services that had seemed so whiz-bang and amazing, circa 2010, were just kind of colonizing our minds and filling us with crap, not connecting us with friends anymore, but, just connecting us with really viral videos that are breaking our brains and hurting our children. So yeah, like people turned on that, but crucially, the Biden administration, because it owed so much to Bernie and AOC and other people who actually wanted to improve the country, that of just make a small class of billionaires richer, took these minor actions with the FTC and the DOJ and they had a guy at the Securities and Exchange Commission who was like, crypto, I mean, I don't know, but we should probably apply the same rules to crypto that we apply to stocks and bonds, right?
So minor that a lot of people feel like, oh, Bernie did nothing and got betrayed and all this here. So it's so like such a nothing burger compared to any normal administration.
Well, they were huge steps compared to the past 50 years. And so Silicon Valley was like, how dare you? Because at that point, like, they hadn't lucked into AI yet.
Which already is starting to go a bit sour.
Yeah.
I think is it a Meta, which is a which is a Facebook thing that they tried to do, which was like a whole VR thing that flopped. They're now going into AI, and now they're already saying, we're going to invest less in that.
think famously the ex-Google guy, Eric Schmidt, who helped to launch the whole really gross AI defense industry, military industrial complex like orgy 4 or 5 years ago, is basically like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, of course AGI is silly and it's not going to happen. And this was all nonsense. So crypto was like the only answer that these geniuses in Silicon Valley really had at the beginning of the Biden administration. And the Biden administration was like, hey, like, let's let these look like investments. Let's regulate them like investments. And they were like, oh God, no, you can't possibly do that. That's evil. You hate innovation,
Yes.
like Silicon Valley had added anything in value in the past 2 decades.
But the Magnificent Seven, Rob.
Yeah. Yeah, it's lovely. The other thing is Gaza.
Hmm.
And like, I don't want to like go off and I think the key thing was the Silicon Valley thing. The key thing when a key part here, it's not just the prevalence, though we are going to get a little into that. It's not just the prevalence of Israel superfans who may or may not be Jewish. It's also like defense industry stuff, like Silicon Valley. At the same time as they wanted to do crypto stuff, they started getting really into defense industry applications. Palantir is a particularly disgusting example of this. It's all very, very incestuous. Like the Facebook investors and the Google investors, even if Google and Facebook and Amazon all have defense industry contracts, but the VCs and the people who are in the networks of the people who run those companies also have a ton of money in Israeli startups and have a ton of money in defense startups. And because it's another really protected industry. Anduril is like this famous like drone manufacturer that makes kind of crappier, slower versions of what the crappier, more expensive, slower version of what the Iranians and the Russians are making. But it's a protected industry, like
Okay.
so like they can
Because
get
that's
the
kind of the
government
point of those
contracts.
drones is they're cheap, so you can just make thousands of them and then swamp their missiles, their expensive
Yes.
missiles.
Yes, but ours are of course much more expensive than the
Mm.
Chinese and the Iranian and the Russian versions. But it's protected, so they can
Get
it's
paid a fortune to do very little.
this story of like dumb, greedy oligarchs does include some folks of the Jewish faith who are big fans of Israel, but let's not lose sight of the broader picture that Israel is another grift. Like Israel is another grift for this stupid class of rich people of all religions that allows money to get spun. Like there's a particularly contemptible Sequoia investor named Sean McGuire who's like really laying into Mamdani and coming out with really Islamophobic garbage. And I was like, wow, what did this guy do? Like he's a billionaire. He's a Sequoia Capital is one of the most storied venture capitalist outfits on the planet. He must have done something. And I looked into it and he like had some like gross like surveillance technology that he sold to an Israeli billionaire who's also does a lot of business with Sequoia. And it's just like, oh no, this guy's just an idiot who just like is vaguely charismatic and managed to plug himself into like this really gross pipeline of military industrial complex blood money matched with like Silicon Valley. We've run out of anything worthwhile to do-ness. So yeah, it's all quite gross. So, but the main thing was that you've got Silicon Valley turning against the Democrats and Biden's like minor, maybe we should enforce some of the laws that, helped us come out of the Great Depression and build the most successful decades of American history. And Silicon Valley was like, oh, how dare you? And also Gaza. The
Yes.
media environment in the United States is already really, really broken because of the internet. We used to have newspapers all over the country that formed opinion.
It's just so much easier to influence. Like if you are a billionaire and you have lots of people at your disposal, the way you can change and put up certain videos of your, viewpoint, you just have so much at your disposal. And the fact there's, sock puppets and all these fake accounts, and you can, mush everything into your own way. Like it just doesn't seem like it was fairly organic that what RFK was bizarrely popular all of a sudden. Like it felt like it's just a much easier place to manipulate and make people feel like, oh, this is my little secret safe space and I'm choosing this algorithm, when in reality it's like, no.
Well, and I think that's true. And that's also another testament to just how dumb these people are, because even in a media environment that dramatically rewards a wealthy actors, a wealthy elite, they haven't managed to actually win in this environment. And like basic attempts to hold on to consensus reality, because like journalism institutions, not just the print journalistic institutions that are left that I subscribe to, Bloomberg, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal got a little too expensive for me. Like not just the print journalists, but also the television journalists, like still employ people who believe that they're meant to convey the truth. And that just crashed into the instincts of all of these Silicon Valley twerps who have all their startups in Israel and all of the traditional poorer class of rich people, Israel superfans, some Jewish, some not, in the United States. And it's just been this nonstop dumpster fire since the genocide in Gaza started.
But as long as we ban TikTok, people won't be annoyed about Gaza.
Yeah. Oh, well, TikTok has completely flipped all of its policy. I mean, I have anecdotal evidence of my own. Like, I don't my Gaza videos
Oh,
do
really?
even even more poorly than the rest of my videos on TikTok. Yeah, I was getting like with my very critical, I would argue patriotic and critical approach to the United States. I actually want the United States to be stronger and better. I was incredibly successful on TikTok. I was getting 500,000 views on videos occasionally. And now I get about 500 views on TikTok. So
Wow.
yeah, no, TikTok has
Are they clamped down on it?
they have gotten their marching orders, and they are doing what the Trump
So
administration
they're not
wants.
posting Israeli war crimes anymore?
I'm sure they're posting them, but they're not going as far as they used to.
Okay. Wow.
And that's like a really key thing here, because I think there's sort of a mystification here. Like, wait, what? Why is Harvard bowing down to the Trump administration? Why are all the most powerful law firms in the United States of America paying damages to the Trump administration? Is CBS News? Why are they paying damages to the Trump administration? It is because these two issues, the going after Silicon Valley, beginning to bring back just the barest bit of financial regulation, and Gaza, turned our idiotic class of rich people, our sort of fallen descendants of people who were better, 100% towards Trump. So in 2017 through 2021, there were guardrails, there were institutions. There's lots, you had plenty of stuff of Elon Musk being like, Trump's a moron, or like you can find that now again. But like, you can go down the line of like wealthy, institutionally powerful people in the United States who were, what is this Trump mess? So embarrassing. In the first Trump term, who are all just, they're not proud about it, they're not loud about it, but they're like, like we just need a little more deregulation. Biden just didn't really know quite what he was doing. And there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there. So, yeah, and it's just this, the depth of corruption, the depth of nastiness out in the media environment right now is it's really disturbing. And yeah, personifying this would be Bill Ackman, of course, who is a billionaire of some sort. I think he made his money short selling or something. I don't know.
A noble profession.
Yeah, he's just famous. I don't think I've ever been able to read an entire Bill Ackman tweet. He writes these small novels. Probably the worst premium member of Twitter. And they're just insane nonsense. It's sort of like Bill Maher level political analysis. He's the guy who famously tried to unseat the Harvard chair by doing like a plagiarism investigation, and then someone looked at his wife's thesis and found that it was entirely plagiarized.
Wow.
He's a clownish figure, and but he really sort of represents this turn of Trump's gonna be against woke and against anti-Semitism or whatever, which is of course like an insane contrast. Like you can argue that a lot of the sort of woke, safe space, trigger warning stuff started, amusingly, on the campus of Columbia by this woman we're about to talk about a bit, Bari Weiss, about 20 years ago, who was trying to get pro-Palestinian professors in trouble for making Jewish people feel unsafe. So like, it's one of those weird things about this sort of cancerous media environment we're living in, is that there's a lot of institutions that were becoming very powerful, being like, oh, we're free speech institutions in the before October 7th, 2023, who have now turned around to like, oh, you're being mean to Jewish kids on campuses by mentioning that Israel's committing a genocide. So it's a very like, it's just there's
Double-sided.
there's no logic or consistency here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It is
But
just
at least there's logic and consistency on Trump's energy policy.
oh Jesus, yeah. None of that. None
It's
of
nice
what,
that he's just handed over the solar industry to China.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even though didn't NASA invent solar panels?
Yeah, yeah. It's really I can't even get it. I can't even start on the energy
Oh,
policy
okay, that
at
one's
this
too
point.
much for you.
Yeah, I haven't done
Okay.
the relevant research, but it's just like so we're descending into this like this sink of corruption, and I thought just a story that came across the transom this week that just is really so indicative of like how, and this is very firmly demonstrated. Paramount, was a movie studio in its origin or whatnot. Very sad. They have an extraordinary office downtown that I just found myself in recently. I was there for reasons, picking up a tote bag mostly. Paramount owns CBS, which owns 60 Minutes, which is I don't know, is that a brand that means anything to you?
I've heard of it. I think I keep hearing about an Australian one, but it's like an hour-long investigative journalist show.
It is traditionally a very
They
powerful.
may do like one on Satanic Panic and Dungeons and Dragons is bad, but they might just do one on dangers of drink driving or generally what's happening in the news. They
It's an
investigate a bit
anthology
more.
show that's sort of meant to do like a more in-depth discussion of things. And we're talking about like an old school place that built consensus reality, filled with journalists who actually believe in the truth and like trying to do things. So it's one of the last things standing.
But I feel like it's definitely like within the American political establishment, they're not maybe going to dig too much into what did this special forces man do in Iraq? It's like it'll still be like boilerplate. It does a bit of investigation. It'll look
But-
into drugs and stuff, but it's nothing too crazy.
But in the era of consensus reality, in the era of like American empire success, like we did actually believe in looking at real critiques, at
Yeah.
real like
Corruptions.
putting real limits on things. In the current era of the chicken coward loser idiot billionaire, we don't
Mhm.
do that anymore. Have you heard of it? So we've got 60 Minutes. Okay, this exists. Have you heard of the Free Press?
No.
The Free Press is set up by Barry Weiss. This is the woman I talked about who sort of created wokeness against Palestine professors at Columbia at the turn of the century. Went on to work for the New York Times and get herself fired and become a champion of the intellectual dark web and free speech. And she's the woman who essentially invented the concept of the intellectual dark web, sort of putting Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro together somehow, as if those were the similar figures. And then she founded this organization called the Free Press. And basically what she did at the Free Press was she started employing all of the discredited pro-war fundamentalists and pro-business fundamentalists that didn't feel like they were being adequately respected in the mainstream media anymore. I'm talking about like Niall Ferguson. I think Larry Summers has fallen out of her orbit, but used to be there. So she basically, and this was the beauty of wokeness and being against woke, was this whole Free Press thing allowed her to stand up a media organization that was basically like George W. Bush conservatism, but because of the woke thing that was mostly invented as an excuse for like pro-bank Hillary Clinton types to feel liberal or progressive.
If we broke up the big banks tomorrow, and I will, if they deserve it, if they pose a systemic risk, I will, would that end racism?
Or pretend they're doing something when they're not really.
Exactly. But it also worked in the opposite for Bari Weiss, because she was able to set up the Free Press for like George W. Bush style conservatism, pro-business fundamentalism, pro-war fundamentalism. She's a huge Israel supporter, and call it subversive. We're the Free Press. And she did have a low level of success among baby boomers. Like I have an uncle who's a big fan of the Free Press. This worked. It worked in a very small way, but it worked. And of course, our thing is free press, and we're heterodox. We're like against the main thing. And then October 7th happened, and the free press became basically the central entity of genocide denial. Like that's basically what they do now is they deny the genocide. You probably saw, I think most of the people listening saw that truly horrific article by Olivia Reingold, which was basically all of the emaciated, starving children in Gaza that have been in the New York Times also had other problems.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You saw that article, right? Like, because that was everywhere on Twitter. So essentially, and even saying like they're suffering from other things like rickets, which is a disease you get when you are malnourished.
Yeah.
So this was this basically one Twitter over the past couple days. That's the free press. Olivia Reingold works for the free press.
I'm just looking at a random heading here. Why this is really dance professor is suing Barclay.
Yeah, exactly. It's all like it's become, but it's also it retains that like I am a basic elite baby boomer who like kind of thinks George W. Bush had the right policies, but I go to this anti-woke production that sells itself as like being iconoclastic, like the free press, the free speech place, and I feel good about myself. And for the past 2 years, I've just had like nonstop genocide denial being beamed into me when I read these free press articles. Plus, it's got all the people I remember from like the war in Iraq that I liked, like Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Neil Ferguson and like all these people. Okay, so 60 Minutes, owned by a massive media conglomerate.
But how long has it been running? Since like the 60s or something? Like it's an American institution.
60 Minutes has been going for a long, long time. Yeah, longer than I've been alive for sure. So certainly the 70s, possibly. 60s sounds right, actually. That sounds right. It's owned by Paramount. It was owned by this gal, Sherry Redstone, who I think had some respect for CBS News and 60 Minutes, but she is also an Israel superfan. So after October 7th, she was like, I don't care so much. So she's selling CBS to Skydance, which is basically Larry Ellison, who is, I love that. I mean, it's interesting. He's very straightforward. He's like, apparently his attitude is Judaism is stupid, but I like Israel, which is okay. This is Larry Ellison, who is a huge supporter of Israel. His son, he stood up a media
So
organization.
Skydance famously, I think most famous one was the Top Gun Maverick film they made.
Which was basically a feature-length argument for war with Iran. So Skydance is buying CBS and 60 Minutes and the whole Paramount production studio, which is like a whole bunch of other things.
And I think is he not merging with his sister's film production, which is the opposite? It's all sort of indie stuff that doesn't really make a lot of money.
I would hope not. I love A24. So
Okay.
that's the Ellison I like. Yeah. But A24 puts out great stuff. I really hope she's not merging back into Skydance, but I suppose that's possible. But importantly, so Skydance is taking over Paramount, CBS, and 60 Minutes Empire. And they're in talks to buy the Free Press, which is essentially a blog, for $200 million. And the deal was
It's a really good blog.
yeah, and the deal is that the Free Press and Bari Weiss specifically will come in and will police what CBS News and 60 Minutes says about everything. So essentially, it is the
Very sort of like Iran.
yeah.
You'd
So it's
expect.
just yeah. So
The
it's just,
Shah comes in and says, "Don't be saying that."
yep. No, it's just it is there's going to be a sort of pro-genocide commissar.
Who was the late night talk show host who's being cancelled, and as a result, he's gone rogue?
Yeah, I think that's CBS as well. I think that's Stephen
Yeah.
Colbert.
But I think they were like, "Oh, we want rid of him because he
Mhm.
criticizes us occasionally."
Yep. So yeah, that's just an extraordinary cesspool of elite failure here, and it's
Monopoly consolidation.
just a monopoly consolidation. Just also Mark Andreessen, the sort of cone-headed worst example of Silicon Valley, crypto loserdom, is a big investor in the Free Press as well. So he'll make
Oh, of course.
and so is David Sachs of the PayPal Mafia. So I mean, it all just sort of trends together, and like the main thing here is to make it easier to make money off of startups in Israel. And it's
Because the Israeli economy is so good at the minute.
it's all so deeply foul And this is the world we live in. So yeah, it's important to focus on the incredibly egregious billion-dollar cons that Trump and his family are pulling off, but realizing that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
I think also wasn't there was there not supposed to be some satellite deal with Verizon, and it was like, no, no, just give it to SpaceX.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean
Because Musk. And also one of the stupidest things is in the US military going to buy a load of the Cybertrucks, which famously can't get up a small ravine and has a car wash mode.
Well, I mean, is that anything better than most of the things the U.S. military buys? This would.
I think it's a new low. I think quite often they're bad on the roads because they're military vehicles, but they get given to police, and they fit into the ecosystem of the military. But I don't know. Also, they're not really bulletproof. Sorry, this is another thing I heard. Basically, someone being like, they're bulletproof for handguns and nothing higher, and bullet armored vehicles don't advertise that low because someone might fire an AK at you and then you're in trouble. So it starts at like grade 4. So I don't know what the military is going to do with these. Just use them to drive around like office blocks or whatever.
Well, they're probably cheaper. They're probably cheaper than most of the useless the military buys. So yeah, it's
You know how basically Eric Adams has got in with Trump
of course
to
yeah. Mhm.
exonerate his bad behavior with the Turks. So that's why he's now a big Trump fanboy.
Yeah, it's a cesspool. But I think it's important. Yeah, we hear about like these outsized actors like Musk and Adams and Trump or whatnot, but like in the background,
Oh yeah,
there
yeah.
are very much lower profile people who are just making trillions off of the carcass of what used to be a serious country. And I kind of want to end with something optimistic. So this is very similar. We used to talk about, oh, well, maybe there'll be the roaring 20s or whatnot. And we really have kind of gotten the roaring 20s. So famously, before the Great Depression in the United States, there was a really go-go economic period. Well, I've read a lot about the roaring 20s recently. And actually, it was a very go-go period for certain selections of wealthy people working on Wall Street. But actually, it was kind of a crappy time for most Americans as their country got sort of, traumatized by World War
Well, a
One.
bit like a lot of golden ages, like the normal people miss out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they just weren't having a very good time. And then the folks who were partying at the top in ways that are very similar and exhibit similar kinds of criminality to today managed to screw things up so majorly that the world fell into a Great Depression and allowed people like FDR and Herbert Lehman and others to build something new and better that brought the United States and the world into a greater level of prosperity. So I think that we are reaching a point of such chaos and crisis that some broader collapse is inevitable. And I already see sort of green shoots across the United States of attempts to build something better. So this whole genocidal, corrupt pack of morons is just so obviously illegitimate and so obviously has no idea what they're doing that some degree of collapse is inevitable. And
But are you shocked at just how much evidence? Because a lot of the meme coins, for instance, are on Ethereum. All Ethereum like transactions are visible, so like people are just going to be fascinated by this in years to come because they can just see exactly who gave what to when. It's like we seem to know so much about it, but are able to do so little.
well, it's because that is why the Trump administration is clearing out all of the administrative agencies. So there's nobody to actually go in and look at that. Hopefully, that'll be a brief
Because it
thing.
almost reminds me of the Soviet Union. You have all these high level government officials are like, no, I have no work in my niche field, but maybe I might go to China.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. Well, with you have the amount of brain drain that we're seeing from the United States to Europe, mostly at this point, but also to China, because they're just like, well, you guys don't want to fund science or innovation in the United States anymore, so cool, I'm going somewhere else. It is such a just cataclysmic, full spectrum screw up on every level. But yeah, I think it was worth dedicating a whole episode to how corrupt Trump is, but also the extraordinary corruption and elite failure that surrounds him. The reason he's president again is because most of the wealthy and powerful people in the United States wanted this. And that's an important thing to remember as things spin more and more out of control.
On that cheery note, we'll catch you next time.
The More Freedom Foundation is also available on YouTube and TikTok. Rob's Twitter is RobOLaw, and he's also written a book called Avoiding the British Empire: What It Was and How the US Can Do Better. And music provided by Kevin MacLeod.